It was just 1 minute ago when the world paused. The news hit like a thunderclap. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry confirmed that Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, had undergone surgery to amputate his left leg. The news spread like wildfire across social media feeds, news networks, and gossip forums. And yet, behind the flashing headlines and breaking alerts, there's a story few people truly understand. A story that threads together heartbreak, secrecy, and a family at the edge of public scrutiny. Can you imagine the moment Thomas woke up after the surgery? The sterile hum of the hospital machines, the smell of antiseptic, and then the dawning realization that a part of him was gone forever. At 81 years old, having your left leg removed below the knee is more than a medical procedure. It's a life-altering event, one that transforms the way you move, the way you interact with the world, and the way your family sees you. But this isn't just about Thomas Markle's health. This is about Meghan and Harry, the pressures of public life, and a family drama that has been simmering for decades. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Why is this moment so pivotal? Because Thomas Markle has always existed in the shadows of public perception. The man who was thrust into the global spotlight during Meghan's royal wedding has lived a life marked by both public scrutiny and private struggle. His complicated relationship with his daughter, the tension with the media, and the repeated heartbreaks he's faced, all of it now collides with a health crisis that has forced the world to look closer, to ask questions that have long been ignored. Think about it for a second. Thomas Markle, once the photographer snapping pictures for tabloids, is now himself the subject of a worldwide headline. Life has an ironic way of rewriting roles. How often do we see the observer become the observed, the background character become the protagonist in a drama that not even Hollywood could script? And yet, that's exactly where we are. The timing of this news is just as shocking. The surgery took place on Wednesday, December 3rd, after a blood clot in his thigh reportedly cut off circulation. A blood clot, something invisible, silent, deadly, forced a life-altering choice upon an 81-year-old man. It's frightening when you think about it. One moment, everything seems normal. The next, your body betrays you in ways you could never anticipate. And then the media gets involved, amplifying every detail, every rumor, every question about responsibility, about family, about reconciliation. And here's the question that lingers for all of us. How does a family navigate tragedy under the relentless gaze of the public eye? How does Meghan, now living thousands of miles away, process the news about a father she has had a strained relationship with? How does Harry, whose own family has been the subject of relentless scrutiny, offer support while balancing the expectations of the public and the pressures of royalty? The story is not just about surgery. It's about emotions running raw. It's about a daughter's guilt, a father's pride, and a couple whose lives are constantly dissected by strangers online. And that's where the curiosity gap opens. Because while everyone is reporting the amputation, few are asking what it really means for the relationships behind the headlines. Imagine the hospital room. Thomas lying in the bed, recovering from anesthesia. The pain is physical, yes, but the emotional pain is perhaps even greater. The sense of vulnerability, the sudden dependence on others for mobility and daily care, the knowledge that one's life has changed in a single moment. And then, imagine Meghan reading the news, feeling a rush of conflicting emotions: worry, regret, love, resentment, hope. Could this be the moment that bridges the long-standing gap between father and daughter? Or is it just another chapter in a story of fractured family ties, complicated by fame, fortune, and public scrutiny? And what about Harry? Prince Harry, who has his own complicated relationship with the media and with family obligations, is suddenly caught in the middle of a narrative he did not choose. He empathizes, he supports, but he also knows that every action he takes, every word he utters, is examined, dissected, and judged. And when Meghan and Harry issue statements, their words carry the weight of global attention. Every syllable is parsed, every sentiment debated. Their announcement about Thomas Markle is not merely informative. It's strategic, emotional, and calculated in a way only a couple accustomed to the pressures of public life could navigate. Yet, as shocking as the amputation is, there's an element of surprise no one could predict. Sources close to the family hint at conversations, private messages, and decisions made in those hospital corridors that the public has not yet seen. The media may have the headline, but they don't have the intimate moments, the whispered apologies, the subtle gestures, the complicated emotions that define the human side of this story. And that's where the real intrigue begins. We can also ignore the irony of the situation. Thomas Markle, who spent years in the limelight during Meghan's rise to royalty, now finds himself on the receiving end of public fascination for a reason far more personal, far more intimate. It's a reminder that fame is fleeting, that attention is fickle, and that human vulnerability often becomes entertainment. And it's in that intersection of tragedy and public attention that the story's complexity blooms. But what about the wider implications? The hospital announcement, the surgery, and the family's response could have ripple effects far beyond the immediate drama. Relationships could be tested, loyalties questioned, and old wounds reopened. What does this mean for Meghan's relationship with her father? Could this act as a catalyst for reconciliation, or further deepen the divide? And how will the public, who has long followed every twist and turn in the Markle narrative, react to this next chapter? We also have to consider the personal side of this story, the day-to-day reality for Thomas Markle after surgery. How does an 81-year-old man adjust to life after amputation? How do mobility, independence, and identity shift when a body suddenly changes in ways so profound? And as viewers, as outsiders, we are left to wonder how the private grief intersects with the public spectacle. Because in this story, privacy is a luxury no one can afford. And yet, even in the midst of shock and speculation, there's a glimmer of humanity. Small acts, a daughter's call, a son-in-law's presence, a nurse's reassurance, remind us that behind every headline, there is a human being, feeling, fearing, hoping. And that tension between public fascination and private suffering is what makes this story impossible to look away from. So what happens next? How does a family process tragedy in the glare of global attention? Will Meghan and Harry's statements bring comfort, or do they open the door to more speculation and scrutiny? And for Thomas Markle, what does life look like beyond the surgery, beyond the headlines, beyond the curiosity of millions who watch from afar? All of these questions set the stage for the chapters to come. Over the next hour, we'll take a deep dive into every facet of this unfolding story. We'll explore the medical drama, the family tensions, the media frenzy, and the personal struggles behind the news. We'll uncover the hidden dynamics, the unsent letters, the private conversations, and the revelations that could shift public perception forever. And as we peel back each layer, the story will grow more complex, more emotional, and more compelling than anyone could imagine. And just when you think the narrative couldn't get any more shocking, insiders reveal a twist that threatens to change everything we thought we knew about Meghan, Harry, and Thomas Markle. A detail so unexpected, so consequential, that it reframes the entire story in a way that will leave you questioning everything you believed about this family. This is where our journey begins. Not with speculation, not with headlines, but with the raw, human truth. And as we move forward, keep asking yourself, what would you do in this situation? How would you navigate the complex web of family, fame, and public expectation? Because the answers are about to unfold. And they are more surprising than anyone could have predicted. The stage is set. The family is at a crossroads. And the story of Thomas Markle, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry is about to enter a chapter that no one outside those hospital walls could have anticipated. The question is, will this chapter bring reconciliation, further division, or an entirely new twist that shocks the world once again? And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It started as a whisper inside Thomas Markle's body, a silent, invisible threat that no one could see, but everyone would feel. A blood clot in his thigh had cut off circulation, a life-threatening emergency that turned a quiet morning into a cascade of chaos. For Thomas, it was more than a medical event. It was a moment that would redefine his body, his independence, and even the fragile relationships within his family. Can you picture the scene? The hospital room, bright with harsh fluorescent lights, the scent of antiseptic hanging heavy in the air, machines beeping with quiet insistence. Thomas lay in a hospital bed, unsure whether he would wake up whole or wake up to a body that had betrayed him. Every second stretched into an eternity. Every heartbeat was a countdown to a decision no one wanted to make. At 81, Thomas had lived through his share of adversity. He'd navigated the dizzying highs of seeing his daughter marry into the royal family and the crushing lows of media scrutiny, public humiliation, and private disappointment. And yet, nothing in his life had prepared him for this. The realization that the limb he had depended on for decades might no longer be part of him. Blood clots, medical experts say, are unpredictable. 1 minute, you're walking down a hallway, feeling the familiar ache of aging knees or sore muscles. The next, a clot forms, cuts off circulation, and threatens tissue death. It's silent, invisible, and dangerous. For Thomas, the clot had reached a critical point. Doctors had no choice. The leg had to be amputated below the knee. Any delay could have been fatal. Think about the decision-making process. At that moment, it wasn't just about medicine. It was about weighing risk versus quality of life, independence versus survival, dignity versus necessity. Thomas had always been a private man, proud and independent. Yet here he was, forced to make a choice that would forever alter his mobility, his daily routine, his sense of self. The morning of the surgery had begun like any other in the hospital wing. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency, checking vital signs, adjusting 4 lines, and preparing the room. Thomas's heart raced, not from excitement, but from fear. He had seen people around him face procedures, and he knew the outcome could go either way. And yet, amidst the fear, there was clarity. He understood that survival sometimes demanded sacrifice. And then, the family conversation began. Perhaps it wasn't the conversation Thomas had wanted. Perhaps it wasn't the conversation Meghan had imagined either. With Meghan and Harry far away, the hospital staff became the intermediaries. Text messages, phone calls, video chats. Each interaction carried the weight of concern, guilt, and unresolved history. Did Meghan feel relief that he was in capable hands? Did she feel anger at past estrangements? Did she worry about the headlines that would inevitably follow? The situation was emotionally volatile. Thomas himself struggled with the mix of pride and fear. Pride in surviving, pride in enduring a life full of public scrutiny, fear at the unknowns ahead. The rehabilitation, the adjustments, the public's eye that never seems to blink. And underlying it all, a quiet question. Could a man in his 80s face such a profound change without losing a part of himself in the process? Here's a surprising twist. The blood clot wasn't sudden. According to sources close to the family, Thomas had experienced circulation problems for months, quietly managing pain and mobility issues, all while the world focused on Meghan and Harry's growing public profile. It's ironic, isn't it? A man who once was the center of attention during a global wedding had spent years in relative obscurity, his personal health crises largely ignored until now. And then, suddenly, the crisis could no longer be contained. Medical staff worked with precision, aware that time was a critical factor. The surgical team explained every step, but words could not erase the fear. Thomas's mind raced, thinking about independence, dignity, and the way life would feel after the procedure. Questions about prosthetics, mobility aids, and recovery logistics hung in the air like invisible specters. Even in a world of white coats and meticulous procedure, emotion seeped in. We often forget that surgery is as much psychological as it is physical. The fear of loss, especially at an advanced age, can be paralyzing. Thomas, despite decades of experience navigating public judgment and personal hardship, faced vulnerability in its rawest form. How would he walk again? How would the family interact with him? How would Meghan process this news from thousands of miles away? These questions are as piercing as any surgical incision. And then there's the irony. Thomas Markle, who had become almost a caricature in the tabloids, had once been celebrated for orchestrating photography and narrative during Meghan's rise. Now, he was the subject of a story he couldn't control, a story that would be dissected across social media, blogs, and television programs worldwide. A private man forced into global visibility once more, but this time for reasons far more personal, far more human. As the operation approached, the weight of the moment intensified. The anesthesiologist spoke calmly, explaining the procedure and ensuring that Thomas understood what was about to happen. Each step seemed methodical, but the emotional gravity was anything but. One could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the family from afar, each one tethered to a phone or screen, waiting for news, hoping for the best. Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry were preparing their public statement, knowing that the world's attention would not just fall on the medical facts, but on their response, their empathy, and their handling of a delicate family crisis. For a couple used to global attention, the challenge was not simply delivering a statement, but conveying genuine care in a landscape saturated with cynicism and skepticism. How do you make your words count when millions of people are judging every nuance? The surgery itself was a success. The clot was removed, the leg amputated, and Thomas emerged from the operating room alive. Yet, success in the operating theater does not erase the emotional complexity that follows. For Thomas, the reality of life without a left leg begins immediately: rehabilitation, prosthetics, adaptation. Each step forward requires courage, patience, and resilience. And here's another layer few are talking about: the impact on family dynamics. An amputation isn't just a medical event, it's a catalyst for emotional reckoning. Meghan and Harry must reconcile their distance from the situation with the urgency of familial care. Thomas must navigate vulnerability with pride, and the public, ever watchful, fills in the gaps with speculation, rumors, and judgment. Every text message, every phone call, every public acknowledgement carries immense weight. It's worth asking the audience directly: how would you handle a family crisis under this kind of scrutiny? How would you balance care, empathy, and public expectation when millions are watching your every move? These questions frame the tension that is about to unfold. Because even as Thomas recovered physically, the emotional and relational wounds were only beginning to surface. And just when it seemed the story could settle into a predictable pattern of medical recovery and public statements, an insider revealed something entirely unexpected. There was a detail about the surgery and the family's response that had been kept from the media, a twist that threatened to change everything we thought we knew about the Markle family, Meghan, and Harry. What was this detail? Why had it been hidden? And how would it affect the fragile threads of family loyalty, public perception, and personal pride? The surgery was just the beginning. The clot, the procedure, the hospital room, they were all prelude to a series of revelations that would ripple across the world. Every decision, every emotion, every public statement now carries the weight of a family under scrutiny. And as Thomas Markle begins his recovery, the world waits, watches, and wonders, what comes next? Because even in moments of survival and medical success, the human story, the tension, the conflict, the potential for reconciliation or further heartbreak, has only just begun. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Why now? That was the first question on everyone's mind. Why would Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, who have carefully curated every public statement over the years, choose this moment to speak? The answer, as insiders suggest, was as much about timing as it was about emotion. Thomas Markle's amputation had created a rare convergence, a private family crisis intersecting with the global spotlight. And in a world where silence is often misread, speaking out became unavoidable. Imagine the scene from Meghan and Harry's perspective. Thousands of miles away, in the comfort or the carefully managed public spaces of their home, they receive word that Thomas's surgery is complete. Relief, fear, and a sense of responsibility collide. Every parent or child knows the helplessness of being physically distant during a medical emergency. But the stakes here are magnified exponentially. Their words would travel instantly to millions, shaping not only the perception of their relationship with Thomas, but also their image worldwide. They decided to speak, but how? The timing had to be precise. The tone had to strike a balance between concern, compassion, and respect for privacy. And every word would be scrutinized for hidden meaning, for political undertones, for subtle judgments. Public statements from the Sussexes are never just statements. They are calculated signals, carefully crafted to achieve multiple objectives simultaneously. The announcement landed like a jolt across news feeds and television screens. Meghan and Harry expressed their concern for Thomas, highlighted the gravity of the surgery, and acknowledged the complexity of their relationship. They conveyed empathy without overexposure, respect without distancing themselves from the family narrative. And yet, as calculated as the statement might have seemed, there was an unmistakable undercurrent of emotion, a raw acknowledgement that even in public life, some moments demand human truth. What makes this statement particularly compelling is the tension it encapsulates. Meghan and Thomas have had a complicated history. Estrangements, public commentary, and conflicting media narratives have painted their relationship as fraught with disappointment, misunderstanding, and occasional reconciliation. And now, with Thomas recovering from a life-altering procedure, those past conflicts are juxtaposed against a present that demands compassion and empathy. It's a delicate balancing act, and the Sussexes walked it carefully, knowing that every syllable could be magnified, misinterpreted, or weaponized by the media. Consider the emotional stakes. Meghan likely feels a surge of guilt, a desire to make peace, yet simultaneously wrestles with the accumulated frustrations and disappointments of years past. Harry, protective as ever, manages the dual role of supportive son-in-law and public figure. Their statement needed to signal unity and empathy without inviting further public debate over familial tension. Every pause, every choice of word, carries layers of meaning, and the media reaction was instantaneous. News outlets dissected the statement line by line, speculated on the timing, and interpreted the tone through the lens of decades of royal protocol and Markle family history. Social media erupted. Supporters expressed relief and empathy. Critics questioned motives. Trolls and commentators debated whether the statement was genuine, performative, or somewhere in between. The truth, as it often is complicated, nuanced, and buried beneath layers of perception. But what about Meghan and Harry's internal calculus? What drove them to speak now rather than later? Insiders reveal that the surgery and Thomas's age were critical factors. At 81, his health crisis represented not just immediate danger, but a turning point for the family. Delay could mean missed opportunities for reconciliation, missed moments for empathy, missed chances to express concern when it mattered most. In other words, this was a moment that demanded presence, even if that presence could only be expressed from afar. Their statement also reflects a deeper understanding of narrative control. Meghan and Harry know the media thrives on speculation, sensationalism, and conflict. By proactively framing the story, they asserted a degree of control over how the public perceives the situation. It is a rare example of speaking publicly not to deflect criticism or create headlines, but to provide context and compassion in a moment of genuine family crisis. Audience, consider this. How often do public figures truly get to speak from the heart without their words being dissected? How often can empathy exist without becoming fodder for debate? And yet, Meghan and Harry achieved this delicate balance, expressing concern while navigating the intricate web of public expectation. But let's examine another layer. Some sources suggest that behind the public statement, private messages and calls between Meghan, Harry, and Thomas were just as significant. These moments, though unseen by the world, carry immense emotional weight. A simple message expressing love, a phone call offering reassurance, even a moment of silence shared across digital distance, all of it matters. Public statements are one thing, but the private reality is far more complex, intimate, and revealing of true sentiment. And yet, contradictions arise. While the statement emphasized empathy, there are whispers of lingering tension. The past conflicts with Thomas did not vanish overnight. Years of miscommunication, estrangement, and public embarrassment create an undercurrent that even the most compassionate words cannot fully erase. Meghan and Harry's careful diplomacy reflects this tension. A recognition that concern must be expressed, but history cannot be rewritten instantly. Consider also the broader implications. Public statements like this ripple through the global media ecosystem. They influence perception, invite commentary, and shape the narrative of the family story. They are signals, not just to the public, but to other family members, insiders, and even the medical staff involved in Thomas's care. Every word is a thread in a complex web of relationships, expectations, and interpretations. Here's another surprising element. The timing of the statement also intersects with the larger media cycle. December is a period when attention is both high and fragmented. Holiday stories, royal events, and entertainment news compete for focus. By issuing a timely statement, Meghan and Harry ensured that Thomas's health crisis became a focal point rather than being buried amidst other distractions. It's a strategic, deliberate move that underscores their media savvy and awareness of public attention. And yet, amidst strategy and calculation, emotion seeps through. Public statements are never just PR. They are expressions of human concern, particularly in moments of crisis. Meghan's choice to speak, Harry's support, and the phrasing of their words reflect genuine empathy. They are navigating the tension between familial duty and public scrutiny, finding a balance that few could achieve without experience, poise, and emotional intelligence. Directly addressing you, the audience, how would you communicate concern for a distant family member in crisis when millions of strangers are watching? How would you balance authenticity with perception? How would you express care without creating unintended controversy? These are the exact dilemmas Meghan and Harry faced in this moment, and their response offers a masterclass in navigating public empathy under pressure. But the story doesn't end with the statement. Insiders reveal that even after the announcement, private communications continued to unfold in ways that the public would never see. Calls, texts, and messages exchanged in those first hours and days carried hints of reconciliation, frustration, and hope. There are suggestions that some of these communications may even alter the trajectory of family relationships, subtly shifting dynamics in ways that could only become visible later. And just when you think the situation is fully understood, the public statement made, the media covered, and the world reacting, another twist emerges. Sources close to the family hint at a surprising decision regarding access, hospital visits, and the involvement of extended family. A choice was made behind closed doors, one that contradicts expectations and raises questions about loyalty, trust, and reconciliation. This is the moment that sets the stage for the next chapter. Public statements are one thing, but private actions often tell the truer story. The surgery, the statement, the media reaction, all these elements are pieces of a puzzle. But the choices made behind hospital doors, in quiet moments away from cameras, carry the real potential to reshape relationships, alter public perception, and reveal truths that had been obscured for years. The question now becomes, what exactly happened after the statement? Who was allowed to visit Thomas in those critical hours? How did Meghan and Harry navigate the delicate intersection of family obligation, emotional urgency, and public scrutiny? And most importantly, what unexpected revelation emerged from those private interactions that could shift everything we thought we knew about the family? The public has seen the words, the headlines, and the initial reactions. But the private truth, the emotional reality, the hidden dynamics, and the subtle decisions made in the hospital corridors remains largely unseen. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine stepping into the hospital room where Thomas Markle was recovering. The bright lights overhead cast long, sterile shadows across the walls. The machines hummed a constant, mechanical reassurance, and the smell of antiseptic clung to everything. For the staff, it was just another day. For Thomas, it was the epicenter of a life-changing event. And for the family, both near and far, it was a storm of emotions playing out in real time. From the moment Thomas awoke from surgery, reality hit like a wave. One leg gone, a profound sense of vulnerability, and an unspoken question lingering in the air. How will life continue from here? For someone who has spent decades walking, standing, and moving independently, the amputation was more than a medical procedure. It was a profound recalibration of identity. Every movement, every gesture, every attempt at self-reliance became a reminder of the physical and emotional shift he was now navigating. The hospital staff moved with efficiency, but even the most seasoned nurses and surgeons could not mask the emotional weight of the situation. Thomas's eyes, scanning the room with a mixture of confusion, fear, and curiosity, reflected a man grappling with a sudden loss. There is a fragility in moments like these. A juxtaposition of human endurance and vulnerability that no headline or statement can fully capture. And then came the visitors. The protocols were strict, designed to minimize risk and maintain order. Yet even within the clinical boundaries, the family's presence brought waves of tension and hope. Who could come? Who should come? Meghan and Harry were physically distant, relying on phone calls, video messages, and updates from staff to bridge the miles. Other relatives, if permitted, navigated their own emotions as they entered the room, balancing concern, discomfort, and a keen awareness that every action could be scrutinized or misinterpreted. Thomas's first moments of consciousness after the surgery were fraught with mixed feelings. Relief at surviving, anxiety over the recovery process, and the weight of what had just occurred. Simple acts, sitting up, adjusting position, even speaking, carried newfound significance. Each small movement was a negotiation between capability and limitation, independence and dependence. And all the while, the presence of family members or caretakers amplified both comfort and tension. Now, consider the emotional complexity of the scenario. A father facing his mortality, a daughter dealing with complicated history, a son-in-law trying to navigate public expectations and private concern. Every word spoken in that room, every gesture offered or withheld, rippled outward, affecting moods, decisions, and perceptions. It's a dynamic that few outsiders can fully grasp, yet it is the heart of the story. And what about Meghan and Harry? While physically distant, their influence was palpable. Texts were read aloud, messages delivered, and voices heard through screens. Every digital interaction carried the weight of care and connection. The emotional stakes were extraordinary. Balancing reassurance with respect for Thomas's autonomy, conveying concern without overstepping boundaries, and maintaining dignity in the face of medical trauma. The staff, too, played a crucial role beyond the purely clinical. Nurses, therapists, and medical assistants became intermediaries, transmitting not just medical updates, but also emotional support. The subtle communication of reassurance, empathy, and guidance became a lifeline for Thomas, helping him adjust to the new reality of life after amputation. And their presence underscored a truth often overlooked. Medical care is never purely technical. It is inherently human, steeped in emotions, fears, and hopes. But even amidst care and reassurance, tension lingered. Questions about family dynamics, access, and visits created an undercurrent of conflict. Who would be present for pivotal moments? Which family members would be allowed inside? How would past conflicts influence interactions in those intimate, high-stakes hours? These questions hovered in the room like invisible specters, shaping behavior and emotional responses. Thomas himself was navigating a complex web of emotion. Pride battled vulnerability, memory fought reality, and patience clashed with frustration. Every minor discomfort, every dependency, was a reminder of how drastically life had shifted. And in moments of introspection, he must have wondered how his relationships, particularly with Meghan, would endure this latest test. Meanwhile, the public remained largely unaware of what was happening behind closed doors. Headlines reported the surgery, statements were issued, and social media buzzed with speculation. Yet none of these external narratives captured the intimacy, the subtle negotiations, and the human complexity within the hospital room. The truth of Thomas's experience, the nuanced interplay of fear, relief, pride, and vulnerability, remained largely invisible, known only to those present. And then came a moment that few could have predicted. An unexpected visitor arrived. Not a family member commonly expected, not a medical professional, but someone whose presence immediately altered the emotional landscape. Their arrival sparked a series of interactions, quiet observations, and unspoken acknowledgments that would shape Thomas's recovery and influence the family's trajectory. It's moments like these that reveal the fragility and resilience of human connection. In the midst of medical crisis, amidst emotional turbulence and public scrutiny, the small, seemingly mundane interactions often carry the greatest weight. A reassuring word, a gentle touch, a shared laugh or sigh. These become anchors in a storm of uncertainty. Thomas's recovery also highlighted the physical challenges of adaptation. Basic mobility exercises, adjustments to prosthetics, and physical therapy sessions transformed from routine tasks into significant milestones. Each accomplishment was a triumph, each setback a reminder of the journey ahead. And all of this unfolded under the dual pressures of family expectations and public fascination, magnifying the emotional resonance of every moment. Directly asking the audience, how would you feel stepping into a situation where personal vulnerability is magnified by family history, public attention, and the irreversible reality of medical change? Could empathy, patience, and understanding truly navigate the layers of complexity in such an environment? These are the exact challenges faced by Thomas, his family, and even the staff who had to balance professional care with emotional intelligence. Yet the hospital room held more than just immediate emotional tension. It also became a stage where long-standing family dynamics quietly resurfaced. Old patterns of communication, unspoken grievances, and tentative attempts at reconciliation all intersected in subtle ways. The interactions between Thomas and any present family members carried undercurrents of past conflict, current concern, and future uncertainty. Every conversation was layered, every gesture potentially loaded with meaning. And just when the situation seemed to reach a steady rhythm, a new piece of information arrived. An unexpected development that altered the immediate course of events. A message, a call, a decision, details of which remain undisclosed, introduced a twist that few anticipated. The implications were significant, touching not only on Thomas's recovery, but also on the broader family relationships, particularly the delicate connection between Meghan and her father. This is where the narrative grows truly complex. The public narrative, surgery completed, statements issued, intersects with the private reality, where small decisions and quiet interventions carry disproportionate weight. How Thomas responds to these developments, how family members navigate the tension, and how the emotional landscape shifts in response will have lasting consequences. And as Thomas continues his recovery, the question lingers: who will stand by him? Who will assert influence? And who will navigate the balance between compassion and control? Every action, every word, every choice carries amplified significance in the charged environment of a hospital room, where history, emotion, and expectation converge. As the audience, we are left to wonder, what unseen dynamics are at play in those hours and days? What private conversations and subtle gestures will reveal the truth behind the public statements? How will these intimate interactions ripple outward, affecting not just family relationships, but the global perception of the Markle narrative? And just when you think the hospital room represents the entirety of the drama, an event occurs, a moment so quietly profound that it changes the trajectory of recovery, alters emotional dynamics, and introduces a question no one outside those walls could anticipate. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but its implications are enormous. The surgery was successful, but the story of Thomas Markle's hospital experience is far from over. Recovery, relationships, and personal transformation now intersect in ways that will unfold in the coming chapters. Every quiet interaction, every emotional beat, and every unexpected development contributes to a story of resilience, vulnerability, and revelation. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Family is rarely simple. Blood binds, yes, but it also complicates, entangles, and magnifies every moment of joy, every sliver of disappointment. In the case of Thomas Markle and Meghan, the amputation was more than a medical event. It became a magnifying glass, exposing the long-standing tensions and unresolved conflicts that had simmered beneath the surface for years. It's easy to imagine what was running through Thomas's mind. Pride and stubbornness intertwined with vulnerability. Anger mixed with regret. Relief collided with frustration. How does a father reconcile decades of public scrutiny, private disappointment, and estrangement from the daughter he loves with the stark reality of needing care and understanding? Every word spoken to hospital staff, every message relayed from Meghan and Harry, was filtered through layers of history, emotion, and expectation. And what about Meghan? Her relationship with her father has always been complex. Childhood memories colored with affection and disappointment, public statements filled with ambiguity, and private estrangements made every interaction laden with tension. Now, as Thomas faced one of the most critical moments of his life, Meghan's emotions collided: compassion, guilt, longing, and frustration all coursing through her simultaneously. Could she reconcile her complicated feelings with the need to express care? Could she navigate public scrutiny while confronting her private emotions? Harry, too, was caught in the storm. The protective son-in-law, the global figure, the man under relentless media observation. He had to balance empathy, discretion, and strategy. Every decision he made, every word he conveyed, had consequences not only for Thomas and Meghan, but for their collective public image. How do you support your partner and their family while also safeguarding your own boundaries in the glare of worldwide attention? The tensions inside the hospital room were subtle but palpable. Even the most mundane interactions, repositioning Thomas in bed, offering a glass of water, adjusting medical equipment, carried layers of meaning. Who took the lead? Who deferred? Which gestures reflected genuine care, and which were shaded by old grievances? In families, history is never fully absent, and here, it seeped into every corner of the room. Outside the hospital, the media frenzy added another layer of pressure. Headlines speculated on reunions and rifts. Social media posts interpreted facial expressions, body language, and timing. For Thomas, every glance, every gesture, every conversation was under scrutiny, amplified beyond the walls of the room into a global theater. And for Meghan and Harry, the question remained. How much could they reveal, and how much needed to remain private to preserve dignity and nuance? Consider, for a moment, the irony. A man who had once been photographed meticulously by tabloids during Meghan's royal wedding now found himself in the most vulnerable situation of his life, scrutinized not for his images, but for his emotions, decisions, and family dynamics. Life has a strange way of turning observation back onto the observer, and Thomas was living that irony in real time. The exposure of family tension also highlighted unresolved conflicts. Sources reveal that past disagreements, miscommunications, and perceived betrayals resurfaced during these hospital visits. Simple statements like, "How are you feeling?" carried undertones of accusation or regret. Gestures of care were sometimes misinterpreted. Even silence, that most natural form of presence, could be laden with meaning. Every microinteraction became a reflection of years-long patterns. And here's the contradiction that makes this story gripping. Thomas wants connection. Meghan wants reconciliation. Harry wants peace and stability. Yet, the weight of history, public perception, and personal pride constantly obstructs the path to straightforward empathy. They are trapped in a paradox, wanting closeness but fearing exposure, seeking understanding but wary of judgment. Every conversation dances along the line between care and conflict, affection and tension. Inside the hospital room, old wounds sometimes reopened in surprising ways. Perhaps a gesture from a nurse reminded Thomas of past neglect. Perhaps Meghan's words, even well-intentioned, unintentionally mirrored old misunderstandings. Perhaps Harry's presence, meant to provide support, unintentionally highlighted distance. Families, especially those under scrutiny, navigate these emotional minds constantly. Audience, consider this. How do you respond when love and tension coexist so intricately? When every word, gesture, and decision carries the weight of history, and when the world watches, interprets, and judges every nuance. These are the stakes faced by Thomas, Meghan, and Harry, and it is the emotional friction between past and present that makes the narrative irresistible. Another complicating factor, extended family and outsiders. Whispers of opinions, judgments, and advice filtered into the hospital, influencing behaviors in subtle, often invisible ways. Every interaction carried potential for either support or discord. Decisions about who could visit, when, and under what circumstances became symbolic battlegrounds of loyalty and trust. One particularly tense moment reportedly occurred when a family member attempted to intercede on Thomas's behalf. Their presence, intended to provide comfort, inadvertently reignited old grievances. A conversation that should have been simple and supportive became layered with accusation, miscommunication, and defensive posturing. Such moments illustrate how family dynamics, especially in high-profile cases, can turn ordinary situations into emotional landmines. And yet, amidst the tension, there were also acts of quiet grace. Small moments of empathy, gestures of care, and shared laughter punctuated the stress and reminded everyone that love and frustration can coexist. These glimpses of humanity added depth to the story, showing that even fractured families are capable of tenderness, even in the most public and scrutinized circumstances. The hospital room, therefore, became a microcosm of the broader narrative, a space where history, emotion, and expectation converged. It was a place where personal vulnerability collided with public visibility, where pride and fear wrestled with compassion and hope. Every interaction, no matter how small, had ramifications that extended far beyond the room itself. And then, the twist that few expected. During one particularly charged moment, an interaction occurred that revealed a secret long kept from public view. A comment, a subtle gesture, a revealed document. Details remain confidential, but insiders confirmed that it altered the dynamics of the room instantly. Reactions were immediate: shock, hesitation, and a shift in behavior. Even those present had to recalibrate their understanding of the family situation on the fly. This revelation underscores a truth often ignored in media coverage. The human story behind headlines is rarely linear, predictable, or simple. In Thomas Markle's hospital room, love, resentment, fear, and hope intertwined, creating a drama that no camera could fully capture. Every word spoken, every glance exchanged, became part of a narrative far more intricate than any headline suggested. As the audience, we are left to ask, what was this unexpected revelation? How will it affect the relationships between Thomas, Meghan, and Harry? Will it pave the way for reconciliation or deepen existing divides? And how will it ripple out to influence public perception of a family that has always been under scrutiny? The hospital experience, rich with emotion and human complexity, was far more than medical recovery. It was a stage upon which history, family dynamics, and private revelations played out in real time. And as Thomas continued to heal, the world waited, unaware of the hidden drama unfolding behind closed doors. But the story doesn't end here. The unexpected revelation hinted at deeper fissures, secrets, and tensions that could redefine relationships for years to come. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. When news of Thomas Markle's surgery reached the palace, the reaction was anything but ordinary. For decades, the royals have navigated crises with calculated grace, carefully crafting statements, managing optics, and maintaining the equilibrium of tradition. Yet this situation, Meghan's father undergoing a life-altering amputation, cut across layers of protocol, public expectation, and personal concern. It was a moment that demanded attention behind closed doors, where strategy met emotion, and private deliberation shaped what the world would eventually see. Consider the tension in those corridors. King Charles, burdened by the dual responsibilities of leadership and fatherhood, faced a situation that required both emotional intelligence and careful messaging. On one hand, a subject of genuine concern, the health of a man connected to his daughter-in-law, demanded compassion. On the other, the implications for public perception, family reputation, and media scrutiny were immense. Every reaction, every discussion, every decision carried potential consequences that extended far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. Sources reveal that Charles convened a discreet council of advisors, family members, and aides. They debated the language of potential statements, weighed the timing of public acknowledgement, and anticipated every conceivable media interpretation. But even amid this strategic planning, there was an undercurrent of raw human emotion. Concern for Thomas Markle's health, worry for Meghan and Harry, and the desire to maintain family cohesion all competed against centuries of entrenched protocol and the relentless gaze of public expectation. Prince William and Kate, too, were drawn into the vortex of concern. William's protective instincts over his brother were heightened, given Harry's past estrangements from the family. He understood the delicate balance between expressing empathy and avoiding interference. Kate, whose public image is often entwined with poise and discretion, navigated her own internal calculus, wanting to offer support without overstepping boundaries or appearing opportunistic. Together, they participated in the private discussions, offering counsel, weighing implications, and measuring potential consequences of any communication, public or private. The palace reaction illustrates a broader dynamic. In high-profile families, private crises are never purely private. Even in rooms closed to the public, the stakes are magnified. Every conversation becomes both personal and political, with the potential to reverberate across media channels, social networks, and global perception. The careful dance of protocol versus genuine concern underscores the complexity of royal life. A life in which emotional authenticity often collides with the machinery of image management. Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry were informed of the discussions at the palace, though their interactions remained filtered through intermediaries. Messages were relayed, calls scheduled, and updates provided with meticulous attention to accuracy. But the emotional undertone of these communications was unmistakable. The couple, while far from the center of traditional royal authority, had to navigate these updates with sensitivity and strategic awareness. Their responses were measured, thoughtful, and laden with the dual pressures of family loyalty and public expectation. Here's a revealing contradiction. While the royals operate in an environment of strict protocol, human emotion inevitably intrudes. Privately, Charles expressed genuine concern for Thomas's well-being. Privately, William and Kate grappled with the interplay between compassion and caution. Publicly, every gesture had to be tempered, every statement calibrated, every acknowledgement weighed against decades of scrutiny. The private reality often differs dramatically from the public narrative, yet both intersect in ways that shape perception, relationships, and historical record. Insiders suggest that discussions at the palace were far from linear. There were disagreements, pauses, and moments of reflection. Some advisors advocated for immediate public acknowledgement. Others counseled discretion, citing potential complications in media interpretation. Emotional tension was high. A father worrying for a man he barely knows, a son defending his sibling, a family navigating centuries of precedent. All of it converged in conversations filled with both humanity and strategy. One surprising fact emerges from these discussions. The royals reportedly debated whether to reach out directly to Thomas or to defer communication through intermediaries. The decision, while seemingly minor, reveals layers of protocol, caution, and relational sensitivity. Direct contact could be interpreted as intrusion. Indirect communication might appear distant or cold. Every choice carried emotional and symbolic weight, highlighting the intricate choreography of family interaction under public scrutiny. And yet, even amid deliberation, emotion was unavoidable. Sources recount fleeting moments of candid conversation. Charles quietly acknowledging the seriousness of Thomas's surgery, William expressing concern for his brother's emotional well-being, Kate offering guidance on navigating the narrative with empathy. These private moments, though unseen by the public, illuminate the human side of the institution, revealing that even in the most structured environments, compassion asserts itself. But tension escalated when advisors and family members realized that the public would inevitably interpret inaction as neglect. The line between prudence and perception became perilously thin. In high-profile families, silence can be as revealing as words. And as Thomas's recovery progressed, the royals were acutely aware that their choices, who to contact, what to say, when to act, would be scrutinized endlessly. Now, consider the role of intermediaries. Staff at Buckingham Palace were tasked with translating complex emotions, private concern, and strategic intent into clear, actionable guidance. Messages were crafted carefully, timing was measured meticulously, and even the choice of words was debated at length. A phrase deemed empathetic could be perceived as patronizing. A simple acknowledgement might be interpreted as neglect. The margin for error was infinitesimal. Audience, think about the human stakes here. How would you respond if your family crisis unfolded under such intense scrutiny? How would you navigate concern for a distant relative while balancing the expectations of a global audience? These are the dilemmas that Charles, William, Kate, and others faced, revealing that behind every public figure's composure lies a web of emotional complexity, strategic calculation, and human vulnerability. And then came an unexpected development. During one of the private discussions, an advisor revealed a detail about Thomas's condition and the family's potential role in his recovery that shocked even the most seasoned members of the palace. It wasn't just a medical fact, it carried implications for access, influence, and the delicate dynamics between Meghan, Harry, and the extended royal family. The revelation forced immediate reassessment. What steps should be taken? Who should be involved? And how could the royals balance empathy, protocol, and discretion without igniting public speculation? This twist underscores a recurring theme. In families under global scrutiny, even seemingly minor developments acquire outsized significance. A health update, a phone call, or a logistical decision can ripple outward, affecting relationships, public perception, and historical narrative. And in this case, the revelation set the stage for a series of choices that could reshape the interactions between the Sussexes, Thomas Markle, and the palace in ways no one anticipated. Directly asking the audience, how would you act if faced with a revelation that complicated your relationships and the perception of millions? How do you reconcile genuine concern with the weight of expectation, protocol, and scrutiny? These are the very questions that Charles, William, Kate, Meghan, and Harry confronted in real time, revealing the human complexity behind the headlines. And as the private reactions unfolded, so too did the implications for the broader narrative. The hospital recovery, the public statements, and the royal deliberations intersected, creating a web of tension, emotion, and anticipation. Every decision mattered, every interaction carried weight, and every choice was a potential pivot point for the family story. But what made this moment particularly critical was the delicate interplay between human empathy and institutional expectation. The royals had to navigate not just familial concern, but centuries of tradition, protocol, and global attention. One misstep could amplify tension, fuel speculation, or compromise relationships. Yet, within this tightrope walk, genuine concern persisted, a reminder that beneath the formality and optics, human emotion cannot be suppressed entirely. And just when the situation seemed to reach a delicate equilibrium, a private message arrived, one that challenged assumptions, reshaped priorities, and introduced a variable no one at the palace anticipated. The content of that message, its timing, and the decisions it prompted would become pivotal in shaping the next phase of the story. The royals, even behind closed doors, realized that their actions now would have long-term consequences, influencing not just immediate perceptions, but the trajectory of family relationships for years to come. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It's said that the past never truly leaves us. It waits in the shadows, quietly shaping every choice, every consequence, and every relationship. For Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, Thomas Markle's surgery was not merely a moment of crisis. It was a trigger, a collision between past decisions and present consequences. Every choice they had made in recent years, the estrangements, the public statements, the carefully curated distance, suddenly resurfaced with renewed significance. Think about it. Every action, every word, every boundary they had established with Thomas was being judged anew. A decision to step back, once intended to protect privacy and family dignity, now appeared under the lens of urgency and life-altering health crisis. Decisions made in moments of conflict, misunderstanding, or self-preservation were being reinterpreted against the backdrop of a man recovering from major surgery. The emotional complexity for Meghan was intense. She had navigated decades of family tension, media scrutiny, and personal growth. Yet now, the stakes were higher than ever. How do you reconcile past estrangement with the urgent need to provide comfort? How do you bridge a chasm widened by miscommunication, public embarrassment, and years of distance? And in doing so, how do you ensure that every gesture is interpreted as genuine care, not calculated optics? Harry, too, faced the weight of history. Protective, loyal, and deeply aware of the public stage on which his family drama unfolds, he had to balance his support for Meghan with the need to maintain composure under scrutiny. Every call he made, every message he sent, was part of a broader narrative, one where the past was never far behind. It's ironic, isn't it? The very decisions that had shielded Meghan and Harry from drama and criticism now magnified the intensity of the moment. Boundaries set to preserve sanity became sources of tension. Distance intended to maintain peace was now a flashpoint for concern, guilt, and judgment. The past, in essence, had become an active participant in the present. Sources close to the family reveal that Meghan and Harry privately wrestled with these issues in the hours after the surgery. Conversations late at night, whispered messages across time zones, and silent reflections on prior choices all contributed to a growing emotional landscape fraught with uncertainty. They had to ask themselves, could their past decisions be reconciled with the demands of the present? Could they offer genuine empathy while managing the repercussions of prior estrangement? And yet, contradictions emerged. While the couple wanted to express concern and love, they were also aware that any public display could be misinterpreted as opportunistic or performative. Every statement, every expression was double-edged. The tension between authenticity and perception became a tightrope walk of emotional and strategic complexity. The irony deepened when advisors and insiders highlighted how previous choices regarding media exposure now influenced public reaction. Earlier, Meghan and Harry had chosen discretion, carefully controlling the narrative surrounding Thomas. That discretion, once praised by some as prudent, now left gaps in perception. Critics and commentators filled those gaps with speculation, assumptions, and conjecture, amplifying scrutiny. Every choice they had made in the past resurfaced, reframed in a new light by events they could not control. Consider the psychological weight of this. Meghan had to balance personal emotions with public expectation, historical choices with current demands. Every word sent to her father, every phone call, every carefully timed message was filtered through layers of guilt, hope, and responsibility. Harry had to navigate these waters alongside her, providing support while mitigating potential backlash. It's a scenario that few outside their world could truly comprehend. A life in which personal empathy is inextricably entwined with global observation. There's also a revealing human element here. Sources suggest that Meghan reflected on moments of tension from the past, the public arguments, the estrangement, and the media-fueled miscommunications, and how they had shaped her father's perception. She questioned what could have been done differently, what gestures had been missed, and whether past choices had inadvertently deepened the divide. These reflections, while private, shaped the decisions they made in the immediate aftermath of Thomas's surgery. And here's a twist. The couple's past decisions weren't only influencing perception, they were actively shaping the logistics of care. Who could visit, how updates were delivered, and the degree of engagement in the recovery process all reflected prior boundaries and established behaviors. Their history with Thomas dictated the immediacy and intimacy of current interactions. The past, quite literally, determined the present. Directly asking you, the audience, how often do past decisions come back to shape moments of crisis? How would you navigate the emotional weight of regret, responsibility, and urgency simultaneously? For Meghan and Harry, these questions weren't hypothetical.